let's get into the introductions here. There will be a more full introduction in the actual workshop itself, but I greatly appreciate you taking the time to join me on another one of my free workshops, which I will be trying to do more of in 2026. It is a goal of mine, which is appropriate given the fact that the topic for today's workshop is goal setting. So let's jump in to that. All right. Welcome to the goal setting workshop, how to better prepare for your New Year's resolution, presented by me, Kiri Jones, through the Human Conditioned LLC. First, let's summarize a vast majority of goal setting advice that gets wrapped into these like pretty packages and gifted to us like the greatest answer that we've been waiting for all year long. Just set your goals and start January 1st. It's that easy. Most of us have been told that all you have to do is decide your goal, write it down, then start January 1st. And if it doesn't work for you, then you just didn't want it badly enough, I guess. And the problem with that is that we're not lazy. It's not that we're unmotivated or broken. It's that we're given this like generic cookie cutter goal setting advice that ignores the fact that everybody's reality is absolutely different. So tonight is not about hype or hustle culture or anything like that. It's about learning how to set goals in a way that's realistic, it's compassionate towards yourself and your circumstances, and it is sustainable. We're going to look at how goal setting often fails, what research tells us actually helps, how to apply a few simple frameworks like SMART and WOOP and whole person health with the 5 domains of health and an acronym called ROSE. This is all without, turning your life upside down or setting you up for failure. Everything that we are going to cover is rooted in behavioral science and coaching practices. It's translated into plain language so that hopefully you can actually use it. Um, Participation is greatly appreciated if you're here live, in order to spark conversation so that we can work through some of the frameworks or potential snags that we would have in real time. And if you're watching this later on, feel free to leave me a comment or send me a message, and we can discuss it further that way. So if the contents are first introduction, then why goal setting usually fails. We start with the SMART goals. We go into WOOP. We talk about macro and micro goals, the miracle question, 5 domains of health, and the ROSE acronym, and then finally putting it all together. I built this slideshow on Canva. It's running a little slow, but that's okay. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kiri. I am a certified personal trainer through the American Council on Exercise and a health coach. And my work with my business, The Human Condition, focuses on helping people build sustainable habits by really understanding how their bodies work, how environment plays a role in health, and how lives like actually function outside of like the very perfect world that we see on the internet. And I do this not by chasing perfection or like sprinkling pre workout on it. My goal for tonight is that you walk away with at least one tool that you can use immediately and a different way of thinking about health and change that feels more supportive rather than like you're punishing yourself. Because a lot of these like goal setting gurus and stuff really are part of that like hard grit culture, like the grin and bear it, grind your teeth through it culture. And that's just not something that works for everybody. So let's start by talking about why goal setting often fails. Um, I would like for a moment for you to think about why you think that goal setting usually fails. And if you're here live, you can answer in the chat, with why you think that goals usually fail, or you can use specific examples from your own life of when you've set a goal and something came up that caused you to fail or that led to a failure point. And this is not meant to put you on the spot, and you're definitely not alone. The statistics are pretty staggering when it comes to how many people have actually stuck to their New Year's resolutions by June. I myself am no stranger to the concept of failing goals. So I'll give it just a moment. I don't want to I don't want to accidentally miss out on something just because I have a latency issue and I don't want to ask a question and then have it have me start talking over it beforehand. Sorry, I was trying to check. I have too many windows open for this, which is necessary, but such a pain. We are lagging a little bit, and for that, I apologize. Okay. So, in what I know to be true and what I've researched going into this workshop, here are some of the most common themes when it comes to goals falling through the cracks. One, it creates a gap between now and then. Goals often focus on a future version of ourselves, which can make the present feel like inadequate or that you're behind somehow. And it's far too easy to set goals so far ahead that they become seemingly unreachable to us. Uh, Number two, too vague or too rigid. Some goals are so vague that they don't guide action. And what I mean by that is because there's no ground to stand on. So you're so vague that, like, your goal was to climb a mountain, but you didn't build in the ground you had to walk on to get there. Others are so rigid that other goals are so rigid that they fall apart the first time life intervenes. And this is a common theme across health and wellness spaces in general. And it's like called the all or nothing mentality, where you get so caught up in having to do the thing that if you can't do some of it or most of it, and you can only do a part of it, or you have to change it, your brain wants to tell you that it's not worth doing, period, which I want to reiterate to you is not the case at all. Any momentum forward is forward momentum. Number three, shaped by comparison, not meaning. A lot of goals are based on what we think we should want and not what actually matters to us. And we have far too much access to other people's lives. And it becomes a goal of seeking what someone else already has or trying to share their goal because you're emulating them rather than ensuring that your goal aligns with what you truly want. Number four, overthinking instead of acting. People often get stuck in this researching, planning, or waiting for the perfect moment phase. It's just a cyclical thing, and you're like too afraid to jump into a moving river. And if this is you, it's not just you. I've seen it everywhere, including in my own mirror. I do the same thing, but it's a common pitfall. Number five, most people plan for success, not for resistance, fatigue, or stress. Reality likes to find ways to inconvenience us when we're on a roll. Imagining reaching your goal without planning for like everything else that could possibly go wrong is like assuming you've won an Ironman race without ever getting off of your couch. You have got to plan for obstacles. Number six, motivation is inconsistent. It is such a false notion that gets pushed around that health and wellness in the health and wellness space that like motivation is the key to success. But it's not motivation, it's purpose. Shaping your environment and planning matter more than um, motivation. But none of these are personal failures. None of this list is personal failures. They're a design problem. They're an issue within the system. It doesn't get addressed or talked about enough, which is a major factor in why I created this workshop. So, if a big part of the problem is that goals are vague or unrealistic, the first thing that we need is clear and defined goals. And that's where these SMART goals come in. SMART goals are popular across all facets of life, from like corporate business down to like every coach and trainer. So, let's talk about it. SMART works because it turns your vague intentions, your vague goals, into clear, actionable behaviors. Research consistently shows that goals with specificity, measurable criteria, and time limits are more likely to be followed through on because they reduce ambiguity and decision fatigue. SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. You will know exactly what your actions are. You will know a way or ways to measure your success. You will ensure that it is possible to attain given your current circumstances and know it matters to you and why, and then give yourself a time limit to achieve it by. Next, we're going to break down an example. It's a simple example. It's almost overly simplified, but I just want to use it to illustrate how to take a broad goal and turn it into a SMART goal. So let's say you wanted to set this goal here. I want to get healthier as like your New Year's resolution for 2026. This goal falls into kind of a few traps that lead to goal failure. So if you look below, we've turned it into a SMART goal. It's now become a habit that we can engage in to become healthier. So we turned it into I will walk for 20 minutes after dinner 4 times a week for the next 14 days. It is specific because we state that we are going to walk after dinner. We know the action that we are engaging in and the priming activity that comes before it. And a priming activity isn't always necessary. It's not a requirement for it to be specific, but it's helpful because it engages in something called habit stacking, which is a skill set that's discussed in the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. Great read. And also, I guess another tool you could use for your New Year's resolutions. But the goal is also measurable because we know that we plan to walk for 20 minutes 4 times a week. It's trackable and it's easy to spot if you were to miss a day or if you were to cut it short. You can see that. The goal is achievable if your priming activity is dinner and dinner happens in your house regularly. Then you have established that this goal is something you can feasibly do based on your real lived life. And this is very important. It's very important because a lot of times when we're setting goals, we set goals with the intention of the life that we want to live without recognizing the life that we're currently living. So it creates this kind of cognitive dissonance between your hopes and dreams and where you're at now, which can make goals feel less attainable than you would think, even if you said it out loud. Here, you'll see that nothing is highlighted in this sentence as it was before, but this is because relevant is subjective to the person that's making the goal. It's your why, the why behind your goal. Like, I want to get healthier. Why? I want to walk for 20 minutes after dinner. Why? The relevance is really up to you. Is it to support healthy sleep? Do you need better blood sugars? Are you trying to lose weight? Make sure that when you're creating these SMART goals, you're tying it back to something truly important to you. This is how we keep the purpose alive when the motivation doesn't show up with us. Finally, this goal is time bound, as we mentioned before. It's in this particular case 14 days, which in reality, I mean, your goals are probably going to stretch across a further timeline than 14 days. This is closer to something that we would use for a micro goal, which we're going to talk about a little bit later, but time bound. So, this is how we take a general goal and we turn it into a specific goal, excuse me, a SMART goal. So, SMART helps us define a clear goal, but clarity alone doesn't guarantee follow through, especially when real life shows up. And that's where something called WOOP comes in. WOOP bridges the gap between intention and reality. You could have all the motivation in the world and you can say the goal out loud or write it down, but WOOP will help nest it in reality in your own life so that you can actually accomplish it. WOOP was a strategy developed by Gabrielle Oettingen. I think I'm saying her name correctly, but it was to help with things like habit and behavior change. It stands for Wish, Outcome, Obstacle, and Plan, and it's a framework that can be used to combat another one of the most common pitfalls when it comes to goal failure, and that is not planning for when things go wrong, which they inevitably will and do. So let's use the same example we used from our SMART goal, the I will walk for 20 minutes after dinner 4 times a week for the next 14 days. So the wish behind the goal is you wanted to get healthier, which was the general goal, and you do that by building consistent healthy habits by walking. That was the wish. So the intended outcome of engaging in this goal could be any number of things. This is what the best case scenario looks like and your why combined. It could be like similar to the SMART goal. It could be things like you wanted more energy, better mood, or maybe you just wanted to accomplish introducing a healthy habit into your life. Whatever the case is, um, make sure that you're writing down what your outcome is supposed to be. Here is where we can really start to strategize. Most people never set goals, period. It's just a weird fact. Those people that do set goals, not many of them identify or take time to identify possible obstacles that could hinder their success. In this framework, you're expected to do that. So, some things that could come up, for our example, could be like being tired after dinner, unpredictable schedules. Sometimes I'm not home. Sometimes the kids need me. Identify any obstacle you can think of, big or small. You always want to plan for the worst case scenario. Now, here comes the real bread and butter to WOOP. Create a plan for when these obstacles will inevitably pop up because we live in real life and we know that they will. Be careful not to accidentally set new goals here, or side quests, as I like to call them, when working through this planning process. Make sure that you're using if then statements, or sometimes it's referred to as ITTT or ITTT, if this then that. Pick picking one of the obstacles that we addressed in the last slide. Being too tired after dinner. So, our plan statement on how to address that obstacle is if I feel too tired after dinner, then I will just put on my shoes and walk for just 5 minutes instead of 20. You're still moving forward, and it's momentum and consistency that will really help you reach your goals. Again, it kind of comes back to that all or nothing mentality where, some people would be like, I'm too tired, I don't have time, and they wouldn't do anything, period. But if you just do something, you're still accomplishing something. It's a little harder to grasp mentally, given the way that it has been pushed in the health and wellness space and in society in general to where like you have to accomplish the whole goal or it wasn't worth it. So it feels a little weird when you're having to adjust your plan or your timeline or your equipment or whatever thing that you're having to adjust, it feels weird, but that's fine because we're planning for it, and the plan to the obstacles is what helps us move forward. So, applying this framework to your SMART goal can strengthen your ability for success even more. So, in the wish spot of WOOP, you would put in your SMART goal. But once we know what we want and how we'll handle the obstacles, the next question is scale or size. Are we aiming for long term direction, or is it there's something that we can actually do this week? So that leads us into macro and micro goals. One is the main goal you're trying to reach, the macro goal. It provides you with direction, like a compass. It's the mountain you're trying to climb. So it is that general goal that you set for yourself that we then turn into SMART goals. And SMART goals are what help us move towards the other type of goal, which is micro goals. And these are like the steps that you would climb in the image that you see on the slide to reach the top of that mountain. They're the actions and behaviors that you would have to engage in order to reach the summit or in order to get to the goal, the end of the goal. And these help provide you with this feeling of always achieving something, anything, which is going to help us combat another one of those common pitfalls of goal setting, and that's the now versus then gap. Um, but yes, you'll take your big goal, your main goal. Hey, how are you? And you will. I'm sorry if that was delayed. I'm delayed pretty far. Um, and so when the comments come in, I don't know how far those are also delayed. But I do see that you said hello, and I am saying hi back. Macro goals are that far point in the future, that big goal that you're trying to achieve. And the micro goals are the small steps that you're going to take and break down your goal into bite sized chunks that you can achieve. An example would be if you had a goal that you set a year from now, you could break your goals down into quarterly goals, into monthly goals, even into weekly goals. You can break it down however you want. Just don't overwhelm yourself with the amount of steps you're trying to take. Because if you make it seem too difficult, then you're going to, again, hit one of those failure points. But even with a clear direction and the small steps that we have built in, it helps to also take a step back and ask what we're really trying to change, not just what we're trying to do. So here we have a question that I really love asking, and it is called the miracle question. It is, if you woke up tomorrow and the problem or problems you had were solved, what would your life look like? And I'm not talking about some like generic response. I'm encouraging um, people to answer in the chat if they're here. Uh, when I say what would your life look like, I don't mean like, oh, I would be happy or um, a general statement like that. I'm talking like, what is it that you, when you woke up, what can you do now? What are you doing? How are you feeling? Would other people notice that these problems were gone? What is the first sign that you would notice that your problems were gone? Being specific. Really imagine that life for yourself. So, for example, if my stress was solved, I wouldn't say something so benign as like, "Oh, I feel calm." It would be like I would be sleeping better. I would be feeling less like, "Oh, the other shoe's about to drop," or I would feel less anxious about the future or things like money. It would. There are definitely signs that would exist that would prove to me that all of my problems were gone. And these are just examples. Like I didn't go into specifics about like my life, but I'm hoping that the explanation helps you answer that question for yourself. And I'll give it a second here because I know that there's a latency issue between the broadcasting and when it's reaching you guys and then reaching back to me. So I'm going to give it a minute before I start talking because again, I don't want people to miss out on the opportunity to answer questions if they have them. Oh, perfect timing. If I resolved my stress, my blood pressure would go down and I wouldn't need blood pressure medicine. See, that's specific. And you would know that. You would wake up, and I don't know what it would feel like to go from having high blood pressure and having to take blood pressure medication to suddenly not. I feel like it would be almost shocking. Um, but part of asking yourself that miracle question is to help you take that life and then backwards engineer it so that you can set goals based on this life that you want to achieve. And I'm not so naive to think that every problem can be solved that way, but there's nothing wrong with moving the needle closer to the life that you want rather than trying to, again, that all or nothing thing is what gets us trapped in this it's not worth doing mentality. If you could get closer to that life, if I could get closer to less stress, if you could get closer to less stress, um, it's worth doing it, period. There's nothing else to it. But the miracle question shows us like what would be different in our lives, and asking why helps us understand why that difference actually matters. So the miracle question is one tool, and then this next thing is another tool that, again, a lot of these tools can be used together or separately. So this why 7 times was a strategy that I was told about many, many years ago. And it is as simple as it sounds. Ask yourself why 7 times. Though I've heard 5 times, I've heard 9 times, but regardless, it's more than one time. And the exercise is to think of your goal, or if we're not talking about goal setting, we're talking more broadly about maybe an idea that you have. But ask yourself why. Why this thought? Why this goal? And when you answer that, take that answer and ask why again, and then again and again. And what this is going to do is help you get to the core reason behind your goals. This is your purpose. And if you go back to the beginning of the workshop, I said motivation doesn't always exist, but what helps drive success is purpose. And so whenever you hear like those self-help gurus on the audio clips asking what is your why, this is one of those things that helps you find out what your why is. A caveat to this is when we're feeling a little vulnerable about making changes in our lives, or like the changes that we would like to make, there is a possibility that this exercise can turn towards something like self-criticism. And if it does, if you realize that when you're starting to answer these why questions and you're starting to say not nice things to yourself, that's a point where you have gone too far with it. The point of the exercise is to get to where your answers are based in value and not on something that's like super simple or too vague or something that's not even your own goal, period. Because you could have what you think is your goal, and then you could ask yourself why 7 times or however many times it takes you to get to that point, and then realize that that goal does not align with you. But when we dig into our why, we often realize that the goal isn't just about behavior, it's about improving some part of your overall health. That's typically what most people's New Year's resolutions are about, something health and wellness related. But setting a goal in any one of these domains that you see here can have an impact on your overall health and wellness. It doesn't need to be exercise and diet focused. Health is so much more broad than that. Physical health is very important, and physical health is on this list of the 5 domains. But here you can see what's generally recognized as the 5 domains of whole human health. And again, this is outside of just physical. We're talking the entire human experience and being healthy. We, of course, like I said, have physical, but then we have cognitive health, your brain function, your ability to focus, decision making. And then as you get older, your cognitive function in terms of memory and things like that. We also have social connection and our feelings of belonging and our quality of relationships with others. We have emotional health and how we process experiences and handle stress. And stress is huge. Stress is a chronic epidemic across society. And then finally, we have spiritual. And this one kind of seems like the odd duck out. And the reason that I saved it for last is I wanted to make sure that we knew that here we're not talking about organized religion. We're not talking about going to church. This is like we're talking about a feeling, a belief system, or it's like a set of principles that really just serve to provide meaning and purpose to your life. It allows you to feel connection to something larger than yourself. For some people, this is church. For some people, it is organized religion. But for other people, it could be things like nature or different spiritual beliefs. It doesn't have to fit in somebody else's box either. It's just whatever helps you find greater meaning in life. But these are the 5 domains of health, and these are other areas that you can set goals in. Like I said, it doesn't have to be diet and exercise. You could have a goal to improve your health by doing something related to your brain function. You could have another goal that is making sure that you go to church more often or that you reach out to people that you haven't reached out to in a long time. Whatever the case is, there are more areas than just diet and exercise. And so the 5 domains gives us a big picture view of health. ROSE, the acronym ROSE, is another lens that helps us spot meaningful areas for change in everyday life. So similar to the 5 domains, it's just another framework to view areas of your life through because sometimes improving your health means improving how you live, what you learn, connection, or what you do for work. Um, this is something that I heard from a licensed mental health counselor, and it's something that I had never heard before. And I think it is a fantastic frame of reference when we're trying to assess happiness and fulfillment in our own lives. It's just another thing that you can use to frame your goals off of. So, now that we've looked at multiple ways to identify what matters, the final step is pulling these tools together into something you can actually use. So, what you see here is a way that you can use most or all of the provided tools at once. So, we're going to start with seeking clarity, and that is asking yourself the miracle question and why 7 times. Then, picking a domain that's relevant to the clarity that you now have, setting a SMART goal, and then solidifying your SMART goal with WOOP so that you can plan for these obstacles. And then you're going to break that macro goal down into micro goals so that the micro goals drive your momentum. Micro wins drive your momentum. Even understanding and properly using one of these tools can have a major impact on your success if these are things that you have never heard of or worked with before. So, this concludes our workshop. I really hope that you were able to learn something that you can use going into the New Year's resolution season or just something that you can carry forward with you. Even if you weren't here live, you can always come back and watch this video again. I'm here if you want more guidance. I'm here to help. I'm going to be leaving this open for a little while longer. The live, I mean, so that I can open it up for questions and answers. The QR code that you see on the screen, it's for my link tree, which has links across all my platforms. I have TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, obviously YouTube. Um, I also have a podcast, which is on Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. And I have my website, which also has my blog. So thank you. It was very helpful. You're welcome. And I really hope that it was. um, yeah. I hope I didn't talk too fast. I hope I didn't gloss over anything that was super important. But that's what the question and answer portion is for. Thanks for the claps. Do I have a worksheet for goal setting? I do not, but I can probably make one. And I can put a PDF on my website for downloads for free, which I will write down. Now, here's a question. If you were to get one of these worksheets, would you want to see most of the tools on there, or are we talking just SMART goals and WOOP? I liked the slide that had all the steps. Something that would remind me of all the prompts. The visual was great. Okay, yeah. I will work on something like that and make it available for download for free on my website, and I will let you know when it is up. And again, if you missed any part of it, I don't remember how long it takes once the live ends for it to post, but there's a few minutes in the beginning that I'm going to have to edit out anyway, just because obviously, if you were part of my last live workshop, you knew that I didn't have this high quality camera because it decided to stop working the moment I clicked live. So we made sure that that didn't happen this time. All right. Well, that's signing off. Happy New Year. Looking forward to seeing more in 2026. Thanks. I hope I have the follow through with this goal that I've set. Have a fantastic night. Thanks for joining me. And for everybody else, that concludes the end of this live stream. The goal is to have more live workshops in the year 2026. So we'll see what happens. I appreciate everybody who came live, and I also appreciate anybody who views this after. Please feel free to leave comments if you have any more questions or reach out to me directly, and I will answer them if you need clarity. But anyway, bye.